The Leyndell Knights are found in various locations in the lands between, but primarily defending the royal capital. They fight using a combination of the Great Bow, Partisan, Knight's Greatsword, Golden Greatshield, and the Gravelstone Talisman. But is their build any good, and can we make any improvements? I'm Bitesized Otaku, and in this video, we'll be cosplaying as the Leyndell Knight and exploring their build in both its vanilla form and improved version. But like the video and give it to me bite-sized. So starting off with the vanilla version of the build, we'll be wearing the Leyndell Knight set, which will give us good defense across the board and 51 poise, which is an okay value. Then moving on to our weapons, I've opted for a distribution of stats which will allow us to utilise the shield, bow and either the spear or greatsword, so we can test them out and swap between them when required. And starting with the Knight's Greatsword, I've infused it with Lightning Slash on a heavy infusion, as our build relies on strength, and this weapon will have a B scaling in the stat. The Partisan is infused with Thunderbolt and also has a B scaling in strength on a heavy infusion. The rest of our weapons are default with no infusions. Our choice of arrows will be the Great Arrow, and we won't be using any talismans, but I've included the incantation Rejection, as it's used by an archer variation of the Knights, and may be a fun tool to include in the build using the Gravelstone Seal, with the following stats on a level 137 Vagabond. But how does it play? Let's start with the Greatsword and Shield combo. The Lightning Slash can deal great damage if you land a weapon art, which will also infuse your weapon with lightning damage temporarily. This is easier to do in PvE, on larger bosses who prefer tanking hits than dodging. We also have a pretty good moveset, and the shield can be useful for blocking attacks and guard countering. The Partisan can poke from behind the shield, and the Thunderbolt is more useful than the Lightning Slash, and it can be chain cast for okay damage, but at range, which can pressure opponents to play more aggressively or punish casters. The bow is fairly effective in combat, and if you jump before the attack with the bow, you can likely dodge incoming projectiles, then be in a position to fire. I find it's better to use this with enemies who are at close range, or if you can predict the enemy's movements to catch them from a distance. Then the Gravelstone Seal will boost any Dragon Cult incantations by 15%, which might be useful for later on, but using this to cast Rejection has very limited utility, as the incantation does no damage and is risky to use. But there are some problems. Outside of our bow and Thunderbolt, we have no ranged attacks, and there are better options that deal more damage to spice up our moveset. Our Knight's Greatsword isn't as long as his Zweihander and has less hyper armor, and this isn't helped by Lightning Slash, which often misses the target and does not produce a ranged bolt like the version of the skill used by the Leyndell Knights. And lastly, our shield isn't particularly useful, as dodging is more effective in combat, unless you're trying to use something like the Fingerprint Shield or Spike Shield. So let's make some adjustments. Let's keep our equipment the same, but ditch the Great Bow and add Sacred Blade onto our Sacred Knight's Greatsword, which will provide a ranged attack and also buffs our weapon with Holy. Let's also add Sacred onto our Partisan, so we can also benefit from our Faith investment. Then let's add Holy Ground onto our Golden Greatshield, which will boost our defense by 20% and regenerate our health by 600 health over the duration, or 17 HP per second over 35 seconds while inside the circle. For our talismans, let's equip the Blessed Dew talisman, which will recover our health by 2 HP per second and stacks with our Holy Ground, then throw in the Erdtree Favor +2, Shard of Alexander and Great Jar's Arsenal. Then for our incantations, let's use Lightning Spear, Honed Bolt and Lightning Strike, which happen to share the same animation as Honed Bolt and can be chain cast to throw opponents off. Also find up on screen the stats for this build, which is based on a level 137 Vagabond. We can see a massive improvement to the build, as we have a setup which incentivizes close range combat, but also provides us with more options to punish ranged enemies, and the ability to combo using incantations. The Sacred Blade is a fantastic skill which launches a holy strike at the enemy, and it comes out fast, and you can bait your enemy into attacking you, then trading with this ranged attack for brilliant damage. And with a buff on our weapons, opponents may decide to play the safe game from a distance, but using Holy Ground can provide you with both healing and increased defense, which often encourages opponents to try and drive you out of the circle before your health fully recovers. But Holy Ground can be risky to use in PvE, as bosses won't retreat or stagger easily, potentially resulting in you becoming overwhelmed faster than your health can recover. There's nothing new on the Partisan outside of the Sacred Infusion, but it's still a useful tool for finishing off enemies with low health at a distance, or catching people who try to run, and it provides a different moveset on a different weapon. And our incantations provide a way to combo opponents for damage by mixing up various lightning style attacks, helping you take the advantage or gain some distance. But in summary, This build pushes the Leyndell Knight's theme with lightning and holy based attacks to provide bigger variety to the build and allowing healing capabilities to help the cosplay stand up to more popular builds that use a combination of the best equipment. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and of course subscribe. This is Bitesized Otaku, and I hope you enjoyed.